All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Occupy Fantasy YouTube channel. We're here today for some DraftKings MMA DFS UFC 263 card best bets, picks, lineup advice, FanDuel tips, you name it. We're here to help you out. Adesanya versus Vettori, Figueiredo versus Moreno. I guess we'll count Edwards and Diaz too. I'm Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy. And we'll be here till about 3:30 p.m. Eastern. The slate starts at 6 p.m. Eastern. We'll be breaking down these 5 rounders, talking about there are actually no newcomers to talk about. Oh, there's one newcomer to talk about. Fights to target, low-owned fighters to play in your tournament lineups. And then we'll finish it off with our stream parlay of the week. I am joined by Jake McIntyre, owner of MMADFS.com, writer of our daily plug. Jake, what's happening, dude?
What's up, man? Good to be here. Looks like a fun slate. Let's win some money.
Hell yeah. So again, 14 fights on tonight's card. Let me get this tweeted out really quickly. All right, we're good. 14 fights, 3 5-rounders. And we'll jump right into it. If you guys have questions, throw them in the chat and we'll answer them throughout the show. But Jake, let's get started. So we've had, at least since you and I have been tracking and playing MMA DFS heavily, we've had 3 other cards where there have been 3 5-round fights. So what does that mean for DFS, for low-risk contests, high-risk contests? Basically, what does the slate mean when we have to not only deal with just 1 5-rounder, but now 3?
Yeah, man. So for low risk, it's pretty simple. You normally want to get 4 to 5 of the 5-round fighters in there. Typically 5. If you've got someone really bad, like Diaz, you can leave him out unless you're forced to put him in, for salary. But you definitely want to get 4 to 5 in there. Jamming the value plays around that. So low risk is super easy. You're not trying to hit 6 winners. You're just trying to lock in those 300 plus point scores and then get some value around it. And normally that's enough. So pretty easy on low risk. High risk, it's a little trickier just because the majority of the field is going to play 3 5-rounders. So we've got a lot of ownership concentration on these 3 fights. So to get unique, it's a little bit more of a challenge. But it also, it's also easier in a way because we're going to have a ton of low-owned fighters on the rest of the slate. So there's a lot you can do. Historically, normally you can only play like 2 5-round favorites and 1 5-round dog without your lineup being terrible. But on this slate, we have a ton of low-cost options that you can do all sorts of stuff. So I think we're going to see ownership a little bit more spread out in terms of lineup construction, which is going to make it a really interesting slate. But obviously Moreno's pretty live, so I think a lot of people are going to play him, and I think Vettori is going to get a lot of ownership just based on his recent results, along with kind of the recency bias on Adesanya getting out-wrestled in his last fight and Vettori out-wrestling Holland. So I think we're going to see some recency bias there, where we can get some leverage by being light on Vettori. And it doesn't mean you have to play Adesanya, especially on DraftKings, but on FanDuel, I really like Adesanya. I'm curious on some of your takes. You've got some high-level takes on these 3 5-round cards. How are you approaching it?
Yeah, so it's always interesting. Like you said, we've had 3 of these slates before, and we normally see some sort of 2 favorite, 1 underdog type setup. That's what the field opts for the most. And I think Moreno and Vettori, like you said, right now I have the Occupy model pulled up here on screen, and we see that 5 of the 6 5-round fighters are projected for 36% or higher ownership on DraftKings. The sole sub 30%er is Nate Diaz, who honestly may be a little higher depending on which type of contest you're in. I know he's a fan favorite. He predates our UFC expertise, I'll say that, Jake. So I imagine he'll be pretty popular. But for me, my uniques are usually a little bit lower on these slates. But I'm okay with it just because, it really is difficult for a 5-rounder to be left out. And so I'm not, going 150 lineups without a 5-rounder. I'm playing 5-rounders in a decent amount of mine. But as you pointed out about Adesanya, I think he has the toughest chance of this group to crack the optimal lineup. So I'm actually not playing any Adesanya on DraftKings in the big GPP just because of his scoring and the way this fight should play out. But over on FanDuel, I think he's a much better play.
Totally agree on that.
Cool. So we talked about the 5-rounders. I guess, Jake, let me see. If you rank these guys, all 6 of these fighters, likelihood to end up in the optimal lineup on DraftKings, if just put you on the spot real quick.
Yeah. All right. That's pretty easy for me. It's actually really simple. It's going to be Edwards, Figueiredo, Moreno, Adesanya, Vettori, Diaz in that order.
All right, I think I agree with that. That's pretty much in line with me. And yeah, so if you're watching this, go take that and use that as your exposures or your decisions to play 5 rounders. All right, let's see who we got in the chat here. We got Christian, Rummy, Weston, E. Christian says Nate Diaz is a lock. I assume Christian is a longtime UFC fan for saying that. Rummy believes Moreno is live. I know Rummy's sharp, so we're on the same page as you, Rummy. We think he's live as well. Weston said, is it good to pick the 2 opposing fighters from the same fight? So quickly, let's talk about this, Jake, because we actually got this question on our Discord channel too. If you don't play MMA DFS frequently, this may be a question that comes up, especially if you read content. You hear about stacking fights. But Jake, stacking fights is reserved for low-risk contests, 50-50s, head-to-heads, double-ups, because in your high-risk contests, your tournaments, your leagues, your satellites, your multipliers, you're pretty much going to need usually 6, almost all the time, 6 winning fighters.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's like 99% of the time, or I mean, maybe 98. I don't know, but it's definitely up there. To win tournaments, unless things get really weird on like a small slate, you know, where like all the dogs lose and you get one crazy high volume fight where like the loser scores 80 points. That's like the one exception. And we have a big slate. For sure, you need 6 winners here. Like a loser's, I mean, unless we see someone get like 30 takedowns defended and then lose the fight, kind of like Peter Yan did that one time, like, it's not going to happen. You need 6 winners. You gotta, like, no stacking in high risk. You gotta have 6 winners.
Yep. So don't play fighters from the same fight in your tournaments, other high risk type contests. All right. So a couple people are asking about underdogs. So I think it's a great natural transition to talk about who we think is a live dog, the only UFC newcomer on the slate. It's funny, Jake, you and I were talking on Monday. It's like, holy shit, we don't know how to act. We don't have to dig for tape on people. All the fighters on the card as of Monday had at least 2 UFC fights under their belt. We're not digging for tape, which kind of sucks because usually there's an edge when we find those. The UFC gods gave us a gift on Wednesday as Camacho dropped out. Terence McKinney steps in to face Matt Frevola. And Terence McKinney, if you go look at his fights, doesn't take long to chart. Jake, I know you found that out, but you and I both like him for DFS purposes.
Yeah, man, I basically went back and watched his entire career. It took about 10 minutes. Really fun fighter to watch. Like, just look at his last 3 fights. He had a 16-second round 1 KO, a 17-second round 1 KO, and a 72-second round 1 KO. Doesn't take long to watch those fights. Really exciting guy. He had like an extended layoff. I want to say it was like a year and a half or something before he came back this spring, and he had lost 2 fights up until that point. There was Deshawn Woodson and Derek Minner, who are both in the UFC currently. So, I mean, it's hard to hold those too much against him. Derek Minner is like a submission ninja. He got McKinney, you know, with the triangle choke, which is what he does. McKinney was actually destroying Sean Woodson back on a Dana White Contender Series. The whole, like, that fight only lasted just under 7 minutes, but McKinney he almost submitted him multiple times, and then Woodson gets up and lands this random flying knee and knocks out McKinney. But, I mean, we have to love McKinney for DFS. I mean, his average fight time is 2 minutes and 18 seconds, and that's in 13 fights, so it's not like a tiny sample size. I mean, this guy, he's just there to finish fights or to get finished potentially, but he's 10-3. I just had a couple of his stats written down, you know, like, he's just so good. I think I actually already went over most of them, but 11 of his 13 fights have ended in round 1. He's won 9 of those. Like I said, you know, super quick times. You know, his striking has improved. He was a college wrestler, but it definitely looks like his striking has improved. He's still a young guy. He's only 26 years old. He's going to have a 2-inch height advantage here over Matt Frevola, who, I mean, if you look at Frivola's last fight, he was taken down 10 times on 12 attempts. Really tough matchup there. But it did show that, you know, at times Frevola can get out-wrestled, and McKinney has a wrestling background. So that's one way he approaches the fight. Another way, you know, he's just been, like, landing these left head kicks to all of his recent opponents and knocking them out early. So if he does that, you know, Frevola also has a 60-second round 1 KO loss back in his UFC debut. So I think there's a lot of reasons to like both guys in that fight. And, you know, I just want to have a ton of exposure overall.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's one of my favorite fights to target. And we'll talk about some more fights to target here in a second. Again, if you have questions, throw them in the chat. A couple comments in the chat, Jake, about salary usage today. And believe me, I'm one of the first guys to say, let's leave some salary left over. Let's not use all the salary on DraftKings. But, you know, from our research, if you look at 14, 15 fight cards, which tonight is a 14 fight card, you look at cards with multiple 5-rounders, it's difficult for a crazy amount of salary to be left over. In fact, all but one of the 14 and 15 fight cards since we've been tracking this for the last year and a half have used $49,000 or more in DraftKings salary. Jake, we like a lot of underdogs tonight, but still, I think it's going to be tough to get below that mark unless you have a differing opinion.
No, I agree. I mean, I think it's hard because people get excited because they see all the underdogs on DraftKings in the 5-round fights, priced super cheap. But the odds of 2 or more of them actually winning, where you could actually leave a ton of salary left over, are pretty unlikely still. So, I mean, that's the way you would be able to leave a ton of salary left over. And, I mean, while that might look good, it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, by all means, leave 500, 600, 700, even up to $1,000 left over. That's probably about the limit I would do. But on these big cards with these 5-rounders, it's really tough to get more than 49,000. So probably leave 300 at the least amount, up to 1,000 left over in DraftKings, only for high risk contests, by the way.
Right.
Okay, so let's talk about fights that we want to target. We talked about Figueiredo and McKinney. We think that should produce a high DFS score. Jake, what other fights are you looking to get heavy exposure to in your lineups?
So, I mean, obviously the 3 5-round fights, but after that, the Hill-Craig fight is the one that really stands out. That's just the odds of that going the distance are really low. I believe all of Craig's wins, like 14 wins, have all come early. He's been knocked out, I want to say 3 times in the first round. I mean, it looks good for Hill to get a round 1 KO, but Craig could totally land a submission and win this fight. So I definitely want to have tons of exposure on both sides of that one. Obviously more Hill. But if Craig wins, I mean, historically, it always comes early.
It's true. It's true. And it's definitely scary to play Jamal Hill just because of that. But again, this is a fight that we want to target. Should produce an early finish, we would imagine. And as a result, should be a great score. Any other fights, Jake, besides Hill, Craig, and the 5-rounders? And Figueiredo and McKinney?
Figueiredo, McKinney, those are really the only ones where I'm looking for heavy exposure on both sides. Normally, I have one more, but there's more single fighters on this slate that I'm interested in than complete fight stacks after that.
All right. I mean, I'd love to hear that too. And so the thing that stuck out to me, Jake, and the thing that gets me so excited about these big cards with multiple 5-rounders, we see ownership compressed heavily. And when we play tournament lineups on DraftKings, we play them on FanDuel, we say try to get 2 low-owned fighters in your lineup. If you want to have a chance at winning the top prize on FanDuel and DraftKings in UFC DFS and not split it with a ton of people, almost every time you need 2 low-owned fighters, sometimes more. And for me, let's go over to the occupied model again. And if we just sort by DraftKings ownership, we see that we have literally half the slate, if not more, is under 20% projected ownership. So for me, it's an easy task to play 2 low-owned fighters. So Jake, if we're looking at fighters that are sub 20%, FanDuel or DraftKings, who are these low-owned fighters that you're looking to get heavy exposure to in your tournament lineups?
Yeah, so I got a couple dogs I really like here. My favorite dog on this slate is going to be Vettori. That guy is just he's like a little finishing machine. He's going against Ziam. I think he's got a pretty good chance to get a round 1 sub here. Faris Ziam has been subbed twice before. I'm pretty sure he's never been knocked out. And if you look at Vettori, he's just his whole record is just all finishes. Now, it is a little bit padded early on. He's only had 2 UFC fights. He got knocked out in the first one, but he was fighting up a weight class, so you can't really blame him in his UFC debut. I mean, he was so undersized in that fight. And then he came back and landed his own round 1 KO in his last fight in just 72 seconds. And, I mean, he was actually really impressive. He's got a 9-1 pro record. All 9 wins have come early, 5 KOs, 4 submissions. I really like his chances to get a finish. It's not the easiest matchup, and you're going against the taller guy that's kind of tough to take down. But I still like it, so he's my favorite overall. And then we mentioned, Craig and McKinney. They're both going to be kind of lower-owned dogs. Really like both of them. And then Figueiredo, he's going to be, he's got a 42% chance of getting a finish, and we have him projected at 18% ownership. I mean, I know he's never scored well, but you have to like that.
Yeah, man. This is the perfect matchup. You got to get a guy who win or lose if fights are ending early, and he's on a short notice debut. So it's the perfect spot for Figueiredo. Obviously McKinney as well. But I mean, these are the types of fighters I always like playing. Rarely does it pan out, but the key is when it does pan out, no one else has them. And I saw a question in the chat about some of these other higher priced guys. And we talk about Evloev and Bilal Muhammad. I mean, no one's going to play these guys when you could play Adesanya, Figueiredo, Jamal Hill, Leon Edwards. So as a result, we got Evloev at 16% projected ownership, Bilal Muhammad at 9% projected ownership. Someone asked about choosing between those two guys and Favola. I think we both agree that Favola is by far the superior play of that group. But Jake,
For sure.
is there any way Evloev or Muhammad can crack the optimal lineup?
So Muhammad, I think he's got a really tough time on DraftKings. You know, he normally shoots for a ton of takedowns. He's not going to want to shoot for any takedowns against Damian Maia. Like, everyone that beats Maia does it by not shooting for any takedowns and beating him on the feet. So I think Bilal's going to have a more conservative approach. He's just going to try to piece Maia up. It's possible he gets a finish, but basically all his fights end in decisions. I do think on FanDuel he's a better play. If you look at Maia over his 3-fight stretch against Woodley, Covington, and Usman, he went 0 for 49 in takedown attempts.
I mean, granted, that's some tough competition, but Christ, dude, land one takedown. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, come on. You got to fall into one of those. Like, come on. So, I mean, Maia's, he's a world-renowned BJJ guy, but 43 years old. I think Bilal's just going to be smart, but he should get, like, a ton of takedowns defended. So maybe on FanDuel you play Bilal, but I think you fade him on DraftKings. Evliov? Yeah. Whatever.
How do you say it? When you read his name in your head, how do you say it?
Yeah. Monster, Evil Eye. Sometimes it's Mobstar. It depends on the way I'm feeling. But, man, I think that's a really tough matchup. I actually like Duadu to win a decision there. The way I see that fight happening is Duadu's a better striker, and Evil Eye he's a good wrestler, but we haven't seen his wrestling in his last 2 fights because he's been going against other more one-dimensional wrestlers, and he knew he could outstrike them. So he shot for a ton of takedowns in his first 2 UFC fights, only shot for 2 in his last 2. I think he's going to be forced to wrestle here more, but Duadu has an 85% takedown defense, so it's going to be really hard to get him down. So I think Duadu on FanDuel is actually pretty interesting, where he can get takedowns defended, and he lands a bunch of strikes. Is that like 5.15 per minute, 4th highest on the slate for significant strikes landed. I think he can point his way to a decision. I don't see him getting a finish. He's been a decision guy, but I just think he wins the fight standing up. So the way that Evil Eye wins the fight is by getting it to the ground. If he can wrestle and grapple, then he should have a huge advantage on the ground, because he's the wrestler in that matchup. So I think he's a better DraftKings play than FanDuel for that reason. So I would play Duadu on FanDuel, maybe sprinkle in a little bit of Evil Eye on DraftKings, but I don't know. I think Duadu wins a decision, so it's hard for me to get excited about playing the other guy.
That's fair. I mean, dude, I played Evloev like every single slate at 15% ownership.
Me too.
So, I mean, why am I going to stop now? I'm going to keep playing them. So, let's see. What time is it? It is 3:18. We're here for 12 more minutes. If you guys have questions, throw them in the chat. If you like what you see so far, make sure you click that subscribe button right below the video. Get access to all of our videos and live streams and uploads here on YouTube as soon as they're uploaded. Give us a thumbs up. If you like the UFC content, let us know to continue to make more of these types of videos. If you want to talk to us throughout the week about UFC DFS or other daily fantasy sports, hop in our Discord channel. You can do so by clicking the join button right below the video. Also, we are giving away $500 in DraftKings gift cards. We talk about playing free rolls all the time. We talk about easy ways to boost your bankroll. No easier way than this. The link is in the description below. No strings attached. We're giving away $500 in DraftKings gift cards. So go enter that contest. You can gain a bunch of entries by following us on other social media. Literally all the details are in the description, so go check that out. All right, so we talked about, let's see, Jay. We talked about the 5-rounders. We've talked about low-owned plays, fights to target. What about on FanDuel? I saw this question in our Discord earlier this morning, and you and I had a little bit of discussion about MVPs on FanDuel today. Usually we're looking for those low-owned fighters on FanDuel in tournaments, not playing 5-rounders. But given the fact that there are 3 5-rounders, I still think there's a way to mostly play those fighters in your MVP spots and still get different.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. There's always ways to get different, leave salary on the table. But because we have 6 5-round options, it should spread out ownership more. So, I mean, normally we're trying to avoid the 5-round favorite on most slates because they're super high owned. They might be 20, 25% owned or something. But now that should come down to, somewhere between like 8 and 15% owned for a lot of these guys. So it's still going to be a lot easier to be unique even playing these guys. And I was talking to you earlier about it. I mean, it's just normally we're trying to kind of dodge a bullet by playing 3-round guys over 5-round guys. And we're saying, well, it's only one fight. Maybe it's not going to be high scoring, but Now we have 3 of them, so now you have to dodge 3 bullets if you play a 3-round guy at MVP, which is way harder, especially on this slate where we think, these fights could go into the later rounds and they could accrue a massive striking total and really take advantage of those championship rounds, which a lot of the time, that doesn't always happen. So I do think you want to play more of the 5-round guys at MVP than you would normally do on FanDuel today. That's how I'm approaching it.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And again, you can play the underdogs too. If you like Moreno, you like Vettori. God forbid you like Nate Diaz. You can play them in MVP because if they win, they're going to score incredibly well, and they're going to be sub 10% at MVP. So let me see here. We got a couple questions about some fighters in this range. I would just call it the dead zone this week. You look from about 8,300 to 8,800 on DraftKings. Kianzad, Big Boy Felipe, Anders, Dober, Peterson, Zayam, not really excited to play any of these fighters. So Jake, because I found myself in a couple builds ending in this area. Who are you most likely to target here out of all these fighters?
I would say Dober, and then probably Anders, and then Peterson, and then Felipe. And I don't want any part of Zayam or Kianzad. I think those are plays I'm just scratching off. I'm not playing them, but I like the plays right below that. I like Calderwood. I think Hooper's a decent play going against Peterson, who's terrible and coming off a 2-year layoff. I like Vendramini, obviously. So those I'm trying to go down a notch. But if you looked at Brad Riddell's weigh-in, he did look pretty rough, and it was really weird. He weighed in a pound under the limit after taking an extra hour, after the 3rd slowest person. And then he apologized. He was like, sorry, guys. He didn't even try to weigh in first. He immediately made them bring out the box of shame, so he could take his shorts off and weigh in. And then he was a pound under. He's like, sorry, bad scale. It's okay. I'm healthy. Healthy people don't normally have to say they're healthy. So, I don't know. It's a little bit of a red flag for me. So that made Dober a little bit more interesting. That's going to be a crazy fight. And, normally we love playing Dober, but Riddell is so tough, never been knocked out, that the chances of a finish are less likely. But that weigh-in definitely, I would say, gave Dober a slight bump up.
Yeah, I'm healthy, he says, as he can barely stand up. You ask people how they're doing, they say, I'm fine. And especially your significant others, most of the time they're not fine. So I like that level of analysis, Jake. Let me ask you about, you haven't talked about Anders. I know you were on Anders last time against Stewart, and he got completely dicked out of that knee, but are you not going back to him this time?
All right, so we got a few major differences. The last time Anders was 7,300 as an underdog. So I wasn't expecting him to get a finish going in, to be honest. I was expecting a 90-point decision win. So I looked at him as a value play last time because he hasn't been a great finisher. And then he comes out, and of course he looks like a world beater. He's just destroying Stewart. Now keep in mind that fight was at 185 pounds. This one's going to be at 205. They decided to move up, but he was just destroying Stewart, knocks him down, looks like the fight's about to be over. Stewart somehow gets back up. Anders is just pummeling him on the fence. And for some reason at that point, he decided to take him down. And he didn't get him all the way down, but he put him on one knee just so he could make sure to go knee him in the face and get the fight called off for 50 DraftKings points. And he was about to get a finish. So, we're looking at 120 plus DraftKings point score if he gets the finish there. Instead, it's a no contest. He gets 50. But now he's 8,600. Everyone saw that, so he's going to be more popular. Last time I liked him as more of a low-owned option. And now they're going up to 205 pounds. And I don't think Stewart's just going to charge back in after seeing what happened the first time. So I'm expecting a more conservative approach. Maybe they're harder to knock out. They're 20 pounds heavier. I don't know. This one's like a narrative, It's you're almost tricking yourself. Is it too obvious that the same thing's going to happen, or is it obvious that the same thing won't happen? And what's your take on this? You're the king of narratives.
I don't know. It's the lesson in context, though, right? Because if you just look at the last result, you're like, well, yeah, of course I'm going to play Anders again. He was about to score 150 DraftKings points. So, but no, I agree. It's completely different this time around. The weight class move up is different. The pricing dynamic is different. The money lines are different. Ownership, I don't know. There's a lot of differences here. So, Yeah, I'll play a little bit of Anders. I won't have a ton of them. I think I prefer Dober and Peterson in that range, maybe even Felipe, just because of Collier. By the way, we haven't talked about Jake Collier yet. I know we're running out of time here. It's 3:25. But really quickly, he's one of my favorite dogs on the slate, Jake Collier.
I think he can win a decision here. I think he's a better FanDuel play just based on significant strikes. I think it's hard with no grappling, to really score well on DraftKings. So, he probably needs a finish, and Felipe has never been finished. But I like Collier's chances to win. I just don't know if he gets a finish here.
Yeah, a finish is going to be tough here. I definitely think that's the case. And it'll depend on how many dogs actually end up winning as well. So, all right, rapid fire questions. Jake, answer these questions in a sentence or less. Weston is asking about his cash game lineup. He doesn't have any fight stacks. How imperative is it to have a fight stack on a 3-round card for your low risk lineup?
I think you want to stack Moreno and Fig in low risk here. If you're going to stack one fight, I think you really want to do that because I think the winner is going to put up a huge score. And if you try to guess who wins it and you're wrong, you're probably going to lose. If you pick one of them and you get it right, then cheers to you. You're gonna do great. But it's hard to pick the winner there.
Yeah, so try to get a fight stack in there. You really want to maximize win probability for your cash game, your low risk lineups. Thoughts on having 3 5-round fighters in the same lineup? I think that's the highest probable outcome is 3 5-round fighters in a lineup. But Jake, for tournaments, somehow condense it into one sentence on your thoughts on playing 3 5-round fighters.
So I looked at the last 2 slates. So we have 4, things between the 2 sites. 3 of the 4 only use 2 5-rounders, and only 1 of the 4 use 3 5-rounders.
So probably play 2. I think for leverage standpoint and what data is telling us, you should probably play just 2 5-round fighters for high-risk contests, tournaments, large field, all that good stuff. Can Vettori pull an upset? If he does, is he a lock for an optimal lineup?
Probably, especially on DraftKings. On the way he wins is by just completely dominating and wrestling the whole time. But no, I think he loses.
Cool. All right, and let's finish this segment off, our show off with best bets. We got to talk about our stream parlay of the week, which we have somehow yet to hit in 2021, but all it takes is one because we're going for super high risk. Unfortunately, we can't spray and pray like Jake likes to call it in the plug. In the plug, Jake gives his best bets every week. Ridiculous ROI, plays a ton of long shots that are super undervalued. So Jake, my leg of the stream parlay this week is Jake Collier to win by decision. I just say he's my favorite dog, so I got to bet him to win.
I like it, man. I like that. I have a similar bet. I'm going to go Dawadu wins by decision at plus 460 and Collier's plus 370. So let me give you the odds real quick on that. All right, that should be, looks like it's going to be plus 25-32. So just over 25-1 on that. So we can get all the way back out of the hole, get back to even, and start a winning streak here with this one.
Hell yeah, let's do it. By the way, for those of you who are betting out there, props were added this morning for the McKinney Frivola fight. Some juicy ones out there, so definitely go make those bets if you can. All right, final questions from Brandon. Last high-risk spot, Calderwood or Vendramini. Jake, Vendramini should be lower owned, so I think if you need a lower owned option, probably him. In a vacuum, I assume you prefer Calderwood, though, right?
I would say put both of them in your lineup, take someone else out.
So there you go. There's Jake's answer. That'll do it for today's show. We appreciate everyone tuning in. If you want more of Jake's work, go to MMADFS.com. Read the sheet where he breaks down every single fight on the card, talks about fighters' backgrounds, gives betting and DFS implications. Jake also writes the Daily Plug, which you see on screen here, the OccupyFantasy.com MMA Daily Plug. Gives the top plays for DFS, FanDuel, and DraftKings, best bets for the slate, and then lineup strategies, how to build lineups for each site. Go check that out. You can follow Jake on Twitter at DFS_MMA. Also check out our Occupy model, which is on screen now. Ranks every fighter, FanDuel, and DraftKings with projected ownership. Memberships as low as $7 per week at OccupyFantasy.com. You can follow us at Occupy Fantasy. Final reminder, we are giving away $500 in DraftKings gift cards. Free to enter, no strings attached. Link is in the description below, so go enter that contest. Retweet it for a chance to earn more entries. You can follow me on Twitter at BrianJesterFF. If you're not already, subscribe to the channel. Less than 50% of our viewers are subscribed. I don't know, man. We got to pay the bills, so subscribe to the channel. Give us a thumbs up. We appreciate that. So for Jake, I'm Brian. Enjoy UFC 263 tonight, and good luck.